Coming up on Over a Barrel, turmoil on Wall Street with more than $1 trillion lost in the last few days. How is that going to translate to prices at the pump and beyond? That and a whole lot more on this episode of Over a Barrel, which starts right now. Well, welcome to the program. I'm Matt. He's Patrick. Thanks so much for joining us. Like, subscribe everywhere that you happen to be watching this or listening to this on. And Patrick, let's get right into it. We have all kinds of stuff going on. We got turmoil on Wall Street. We've got things possibly developing between Ukraine and Russia that could actually throw more crude oil into the market. Wow, my brain actually hurts at this point. So let's get right into the turmoil on Wall Street. We have had a very interesting trading session over the last multiple days as we just let off the tease, if you will. More than $1 trillion has been wiped out on Wall Street over the last few days. I would advise, although I'm not a financial expert, probably not a good time to look at your 401k value at this point. Just throwing it out there.
That's great advice, by the way. And if you haven't already, don't look.
Yeah, you're in it for the long term, not the short term, right?
That's what we all have to tell ourselves.
Don't think I would be checking that one out right now. Denial might be a good thing at this particular moment. So talk to us about what's going on here. How is all of this impacting crude oil, the prices at the pump? Because I'm seeing all these headlines, and in the back of my mind, I'm going, please don't let the price be higher. Please don't let the price be higher, right? Because I'm getting fuel, 2 tanks of gasoline yesterday, right? So I'm like, please don't let the price, please don't. And so far, I've actually seen prices go down a nickel to a dime. My fingers are crossed. I'm actually holding my breath almost until I turn blue. Can we expect that to continue, or is all of this just going to wreak havoc?
Well, it's all really tied up there, Matt. And as we look at the live shot of the Dow Jones, I mean, yeah, to your point, another down day today, and it's been a really bad month, really been a really awful week, and that's also translated to what motorists are paying at the pump, as you mentioned. Gas prices have been in full-on decline over the last couple of days. In fact, most states, 40 of the nation's 50 states, seeing gas prices lower than last week. Now, jumping over to our national focus here for gasoline prices, you'll see on your screen. If you're not, we'll describe it to you. But national average down a nickel from last week. Matt, that's fairly unusual this time of year, right? The adage of springing forward does apply to gas prices. Thankfully, they've not sprung forward, at least yet. In fact, I was traveling in Florida just a couple days ago. I managed to fill up for $2.79 a gallon down here in Florida, which, if you look at that map, is a nice orange color. I actually did go through Citrus, Florida the other day, but it has been an exceptional time. You look at all the indicators on your screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, those metrics showing down from yesterday, down from a week ago, down from a month ago, and down 36 cents from a year ago. And Matt, by the way, the simple back of the envelope calculation, Americans are spending $127 million less on gasoline. But before we all say, yes, thanks, Trump, again, to your point, may not be the greatest time to look at the stock market, because all of this, the downward fall in gas prices in the stock market, really tied together. Economic uncertainty is the name of what's happening here. Sprinkle in a little bit of OPEC Plus's decision last week to start slowly restoring oil production in April. And that's where we're getting basically a second run, Matt. The win back in the sales. You'll remember briefly before Christmas of last year, we did see the national average falling below $3 a gallon. And look at that. We're only 4 cents a gallon away from seeing that today. 32 states, Matt. By the way, Kentucky is one of those states where you can, yes, find an average price below $3 a gallon. In fact, Matt, I think your state is number 2, 266. Let's look here. Top 25 for least expensive. And would you look at that? Kentucky is number 2 for the cheapest prices in the country.
I'll take it. I paid $2.45 yesterday a gallon. I was in St. Louis. I did not get gas there. I checked. Do you know, in the Gas Buddy app, you can actually just simply type in a town if you know you've got enough gas to get there, and determine if you're going to fill up at your destination.
Beautiful plug.
Before you take off. Just throwing that out there. And that's what I did yesterday, because in St. Louis, the price point was definitely not $2.45 a gallon. Throwing that out there.
And by the way,
over 50 cents a gallon by doing that.
And to Matt's point, if you have the new Pay with Gas Buddy Plus card, you can now save up to 33 cents a gallon with deal alerts. So you'll want to check that
Yep,
out.
it's very true. It's very. I literally made that he sound. I'm just like, yeah, or saving money is always a good thing, right? So these are the things that we're looking at very cautiously. I'm going to throw this out there because I heard and it hit my brain as you were describing it. Do you think that we are seeing a potential, what I would call loosely the Trump doctrine starting to play out, whereas he is looking from the campaign promises, talking about crude oil and wanting gas prices and all of these different things to come down? Could you potentially be seeing the formation of a potential Trump doctrine, if you will, coming into play, where OPEC Plus is increasing crude oil output? And as we are recording this, there's some breaking news regarding a potential ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine that President Trump has hinted at lifting sanctions on Russia at some point or another that would include crude oil being allowed to be sold on the open market once again. You add them all up, what are we looking at? Looking at a lot of potential crude oil availability.
Yeah.
Would that drive the price point of crude oil downward, where he will potentially try to offset some of the tariffs that are in play right now as well?
Well, yeah, there's a big convoluted mess of things that are happening, that could impact gasoline prices. As you mentioned, Russia and the sanctions on Russia uh, have had a major role over the last couple of years in terms of market impacts. And now, yeah, this is something to potentially watch if there's a ceasefire. Now, there's been various headlines, Matt, that have been floated. OPEC Plus, of course, a couple of days ago had said that they're going to start raising oil production here as we get closer to April. So there's the news that OPEC Plus is going to be pumping more. But then, Matt, there's another headline opposite the one that I just posted there. Recession fears and tariffs are limiting gains. But then Russia came out yesterday or the day prior and said that OPEC Plus may reverse oil output after April as Kazakhstan has pledged to cut back. Kazakhstan had been overproducing their quota by quite a bit. All of this to say, if the Saudis, if the Russians produce more, if they're no longer sanctioned, that would also give President Trump the cover to ratchet up sanctions pressure on Venezuela and Iran, which is something he's promised to do. Ironically, Iran today said that they're not going to negotiate. They're already in a pretty weak position to be able to, draw the parallels here, but Iran said they're not going to negotiate. So I would look for President Trump to ratchet up pressure on Iran and Venezuela as well. And absolutely, that's going to leave the door open for potentially Russia to start producing more oil, especially if the sanctions on Russia are eased. So, will there be a deal? That's a big question mark, Matt. But in my mind, that this is peanuts compared to the overall concern about the U.S. economy. Now, consumer sentiment, we've been documenting the last couple of weeks. If you haven't listened to some of the past episodes, listen, to our January and February episodes because we highlighted that the uncertainty was there. Consumer sentiment, we had specifically mentioned in February, was starting to cave a bit, and that was worrisome. And Matt, again, before people cheerlead lower gas prices, I do have to say that my retirement's a little bit more important to me. I do love low gas prices. I think we're both in the same boat. But keep in mind, right now, the low gas prices are a consequence of economic uncertainty, especially the tariffs on Canada. And while Trump has paused those tariffs until April 2nd, now Canada is ratcheting up the pressure with Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying and stipulating
Yeah.
electricity tariffs on three states that receive electricity from Canada. That would be Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. So
Yes.
again, this is kind of leading to de-escalation, or excuse me,
An
escalation,
escalation.
right? And hopefully de-escalation will happen, but for now there's just been a lot of escalation. That's the fear moving forward, is that if cooler heads don't prevail, there's going to be more consequence to pay in terms of an economic slowdown. And while that may bring lower gas prices, Matt, it's also going to mean more hardship when it comes to the economy, a slowdown, a potential recession. We're
Right.
obviously hearing a lot about that already, that Wall Street is very concerned that Trump is going to essentially um, throw off the so-called soft landing.
Yeah, and you brought up my point. Yes, I do love a buck 99 or less for a gallon of gas. But if business is slow because a recession or something has taken hold, well, then what difference does 50 cents a gallon make if you're down many thousands due to revenue? Let me throw this one. You brought up the electric tariff as well. Let me throw this out there. I have seen many news articles talking about 1.5 million Americans being impacted by that tariff.
Yeah.
That is actually inaccurate. It is 1.5 million electric customers. And that's a pet peeve of mine, being in the journalism era for over 25 years. I checked and confirmed before I'm speaking out loud on this. An electric customer could be a family of four, a hospital, a gas station, and any aspect of that. So it's not
So it's
1.5.
1.4 million households.
1.5 million households or businesses. So an electric
Okay.
customer. So
So it is probably somewhere in the ballpark of many million customers then.
that is correct.
Okay.
And I confirmed this information with verifiable sources prior to mentioning that out loud, as I would journalistically do. I wanted to make sure that I was accurate. A lot of people throw out as if they're interchangeable. They're not.
Yeah.
When 1,000 customers are without power, it could be a family of four, a hospital, or whatever. So it's many thousands, right? So it's the same situation
Yeah, exactly.
here. 1.5 million customers, not just individual people.
Now, Matt, to your point, I wanted to jump on the issue that you brought up here because this is something that is being talked about on your screen now. If you're following us on YouTube,
Yep.
The headline: Ukraine agrees to a U.S.-led ceasefire plan. The big caveat: if Russia accepts, and we have not seen a whole lot of cooperation from Russia on some of these initial plans. So I don't, I'd be a little pessimistic by saying, but according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Ukraine is ready to start talking and stop shooting. Now, keep in mind, Matt, this comes at a background that Ukraine has continued to go after Russian oil infrastructure. In fact, just 35 minutes ago, we did have a story that hit the air that Ukraine has hit a major refinery in a massive drone attack overnight. Ukrainian forces hitting and damaging a refinery in Moscow. Now, very interestingly enough, Matt, it's very difficult to pronounce some of these refineries in Russia that are being hit. More consonants, it seems like, than vowels in some of these facilities. But bottom line here is that Ukraine has really amped up in the last couple of months these drone attacks on Russian oil infrastructure and has caused a lot of damage, but it has not had yet a major impact on oil prices globally, simply because of the tariffs the sanctions that do continue. But the other interesting thing here, if there is a deal, is will the sanctions be eased? Right, there can be a ceasefire, but a ceasefire is not sanctions improvement. And keep in mind, a lot of the harmful sanctions on Russia are from the U.S. So will President Trump ease the sanctions, or is this going to be an exclusive ceasefire before those conversations talk? Everything lies in the fold here, Matt. Gas prices, oil prices, diesel prices, all kind of a wait and see. Speaking of which, seasonality, when it comes to these drone strikes, it's getting warmer now in areas like Russia. So you may start to see a little bit more fighting over there unless there is a ceasefire. Going to the seasonality here in the U.S., Matt, it's very unusual to see gas prices actively declining like they are in the U.S. In fact, looking over the last week, I'll pull up the biggest movers here and share this tab. But from a week ago, bulk majority of states here, look at all the blue here in this column. I see 21 out of 24 states here that are in blue, which means they're seeing lower prices than a month ago. A lot of areas seeing prices quite a bit lower.
In the spring, Patrick? When is the last time you've seen that in the spring?
When is the last time you've seen that in the spring?
Probably COVID, Matt. I think, and by the way, March Madness is around the corner, and this is a time of year that we usually see March Madness at the pump as well. So, to not see it. By the way, gas prices in the U.S. are now at their lowest March level since the pandemic of 2021. 2020 is also when we saw prices bottom out in April. Very unusual, but obviously 2020 and 21 very heavily influenced by the fact that few Americans were, filling up as they normally do and commuting as they normally do. So to see parallels that gas prices are dropping should tell you that very much like 2021 and 2020, there are alarm bells going off at the economic level that are causing oil prices and gasoline prices to be under distress.
So let's talk about that for just a moment. Right now, as we're recording this, the Dow Jones Industrials is down almost 400, 500 points. That is yesterday, for example, which is a Monday as of the time of this recording. It was down, 800, 900 points. We've got a lot of things going on there. And the reason for that is that R word, recession, and the impact of tariffs. One thing that Canada has said that is that, yeah, they're going to keep pumping crude oil to America, but they are also very adamant that they are going to find new customers for their crude oil rather than just relying only on the United States. Could this short-term tariff tiff, if you will, back and forth, create a longer-term trend when it comes to the Canadian oil supply?
Well, it certainly could, Matt. In fact, there's already discussion in Canada of why the heck are we relying on the U.S. as our primary customer. Canadians have been talking about pipelines, which is really interesting, by the way, because now there's going to be elections in Canada. The Liberal Party in Canada has now named Mark Carney its candidate. And so there will be elections in Canada. And a lot of politicians are talking about that. Why aren't we building more pipelines? And the real irony here is we look at that graphic. U.S. stock market has lost $4 trillion in value. The big conversation here, Matt, is something I saw on Fox News yesterday, that President Trump is still appealing to TransCanada Energy, a Canadian company. Trump is still appealing for them to finish the Keystone XL pipeline. Now, the huge irony of that situation is that pipeline would deliver Canada relief in the form of being able to get their oil closer to a port of export where oil can be exported. By the way, that was the huge push for that pipeline to be built because Canada wouldn't have to rely on the US now, right? They can pump a lot more oil further south where it could be exported to a global market. So the irony here is that Trump is saying, no, we don't need anything from Canada, right? He has infamously said we don't need to rely on Canada, and then handing Canada the keys to a pipeline to be able to export more of their product out of the United States. So that's the biggest thing here is Trump could be fulfilling Canada's own dream by pushing to build the Keystone XL pipeline. It would be a big mistake in my mind.
Unless of the 51st state. I mean, we have so much stuff going on, and I say that in jest, but at the same time, there's legitimacy. There's so much going on. It is a dizzying amount of headlines that are on a daily basis. I think we could justifiably throw a breaking news banner on the bottom of most of our podcasts over the past couple of weeks, and every single one of them would still apply. And quite honestly, the turmoil would still be in the following podcast fairly accurate. We would just tweak a few of the words and keep on moving. There's just so much there. And so I did not realize that the Keystone Pipeline would have
by the way,
up
Keystone XL pipeline. And just so we're all on the same page, the Keystone Pipeline's been operating since 2010. Of course, many of us also use that interchangeably. We refer to the Keystone XL pipeline, but we call it Keystone. So just to be specific, yeah, we're still talking about the Keystone XL pipeline. Of course, that was abandoned. TransCanada said, all right, we're not doing this after Biden ripped up the permit. So I think President Trump is still hoping that it'll be built.
This is putting a whole lot of words in a whole lot of people's mouths here that you may not be prepared to answer. But do you think that the reason why they nixed the XL pipeline was because it would have given Canada access to a global market?
I highly doubt that. I think it happened so quick under Biden, right? He was took the oath of office, and boom, that was like one of the first things. It wasn't even thought about, Matt, right? This is not something that the administration seemed to ponder, right? The pros and cons of doing this. It was President Biden appeasing the environmentalists that said, close the Keystone pipeline, right? I mean, that's something literally Biden had campaigned on. I mean, he had also campaigned on, trying to end fossil fuels, right? He also said that, though a president really can't, it was something to appease his environmental fan base, but it's not like you can just shut down private companies drilling. So that was also a farce. But yeah, I don't think the Biden administration really thought that was going to be the end goal.
Right. Okay. Well, I just wanted to just bring that up, wondering, well, why? Well, why? Why would that all that? So all right. So we have so many things. All right. So we've talked about crude oil from Canada. the electric tariffs, the tiff back and forth, especially between Canada and the
Yeah.
United States when it comes to these tariffs. Mexico, President Trump is almost, while the threat was kind of lumped in together, it seems as if the Mexican president and President Trump are hitting it off a little bit
They've
better.
navigated. Mexico has definitely navigated this better, in my opinion.
Now, they provide crude oil to the United States as well.
They do, not nearly as much, about 700,000 barrels a day, but it's still something, and it goes to the Gulf Coast where it could be more easily replaced. But yeah, you talk about all the dynamics of these relationships, Matt. I think in the long term, Mexico is probably positioning itself better than Canada. Not that Canada should be bowing, but I don't think with who Trump is, you risk a lot of economic challenges when you react. They're basically trying to level up Trump, which is fascinating, right? You have to read the room better, and the Canadians are not reading the room real well, and Mexico is doing a much better job at navigating the tumult brought on by President Trump's promises.
I
Now,
seriously would have thought it would have been the polar opposite of that, where the Canadians would have read the room a little bit better, and Mexico would have said, over our whatever, we're not doing this.
yeah,
But literally, it's been the exact opposite of
Mexico has been navigating President Trump's ego. I think that's a lot of this has been, managing egos. And the Canadians also have an ego in some way. And that's why you're seeing also the premier of Ontario now. He's got a bit of his own ego, right? I'm going to shut off electricity. I'm going to slap tariffs. He's a premier of a province. That would be like a governor of a state thinking that they can dictate, federal policy. And I had a question today, by the way. Somebody said, well, could Doug Ford shut down the pipelines that run from Canada? No, I don't think he could, right? He's telling the Alberta premier to shut down the pipeline. I don't think she could either, because a lot of this, is governed by the USMCA, the US Mexico Canada agreement that President Trump basically was a signature piece of his legislation from his first term. So, back to all of this, Canada, you know, they could do a little bit better instead of escalating the rhetoric. If they started to try and understand Trump, they could probably win, right? Because all Trump wants is a lollipop and to be told he's right. You know, he needs a little tender loving care in the relationship, and Canada is actually escalating that. So yeah, it's fascinating watching the Canadians maybe take a different approach than Mexico is.
It really is surprising. I go back to that once again. I really figured it would have been the other way around for both Canada and Mexico, and yet here we are. Canada definitely digging in their heels, and President Trump appearing to dig in his, even announcing because of the electric tariff, he's talking about reciprocal tariffs on steel and.
No, he actually and he actually implemented the
Yeah.
50%. He ratcheted up the tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50%. So again, see, this is the wrong approach. It's just going to keep going back and forth until everyone is maxed out every potential tariff, and both economies are just absolutely trashed.
Yeah, that's the concern, obviously, because we all sit in the middle of the outcome, whatever it may be. And when I say we, I'm talking all 50 states, all of those of us who are in America. We are here, and the prices will either go up, down, sideways. But the talk of all of these things, I think, is the precipice of obviously what is creating the havoc on Wall Street and these other aspects. And exactly back to the original point, crude oil going down in price and gas prices going down in price in the spring may look good in the short term, but that would be a symptom or an indication of something more longer term that none of us really want to go through.
Yeah, exactly right. This downturn is going to be deeper, sharper, and more painful to many more Americans if we do continue, this type of escalation. If countries continue to respond this way, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, there's so much going on. I will throw out that it looks like, according to the BBC in England, Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicating that they are going to present the ceasefire proposal to Russia within the coming days. So we will not have an answer, for at least a few days, at least if that statement is accurate. on those pieces of the puzzle, if you will. With regard to gas prices, where do you see things heading up? Since I know that we're almost out of time here, where do you see things going, at least in the short term, the next several days? Are we bottoming out? Do we have more to go? I mean, there's a live look at least as of the taping. Dow Jones down now about 230 points. For those of you listening, this is crazy. There's so much going on.
Yeah, when is the bleeding going to stop? President Trump today, and also interesting, his press secretary also now saying, after commenting on the campaign trail of we're going to have a great stock market, it's going to go up. And now to see Trump basically ignoring comments on why the stock market is actively plummeting. And yeah, we're down another 0.6% today there live. It's been interesting because Trump has been pro stock market, your investments, the economy was so great. And now a lot of silence when it comes to the press secretary, relatively hostile, by the way. Caroline Levitt was very hostile to those questions today when taking questions from reporters. Basically just said, look, this is going to be the pain that accompanies change. But of course, a lot of this talk is tariff related, right? We're not stupid. The market does not like tariffs because they're a tax on Americans. And basically what she's saying is, this is because of what President Trump is doing. I don't know about you, but I don't know if a whole lot of Americans are going to like these big drops that we've seen in the stock market when so many of us are invested in it, retirement wise. This is not just a rich people thing, folks. A lot of Americans who work put their retirement, right, investment into the stock market. So a lot here, Matt, to unpack. As you said, we've delved down a lot of this, but for now, as goes the economy, as go gas prices. If that indicator is down for the Dow Jones, gas prices could continue trending lower. If that thing starts heading up again, it's probably a positive economic sign and gas prices could eventually go up. But by the way, this is analysis I did about a decade ago. When the Dow moves up or down by triple digits, the price of oil and gasoline generally follow north of 90% of the time.
Certainly words to live by at this point. We will continue to monitor everything here on Over a Barrel. And of course, as the situations continue to develop, unfold, change, shift, morph, whatever, we'll be monitoring that. And we'll put out as many podcasts as we need to keep you informed of what's going on. And there's just so much there, Patrick. It really is a
in the meantime, Matt, if anyone has specific questions about some of the tariff uncertainty, which is a very regional, shoot us your question to podcast@gasbuddy.com, Matt, and I get those directly. And again, to Matt's earlier point, we would love if you could take a minute, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify as well. And really appreciate it if you throw us a rating as well. Hopefully you've learned a lot from these episodes. We'll be here guiding prices up or down. But Matt, I think the prognosis moving forward is there's probably still some more downward pressure coming to gas prices, especially in the West Coast. That refinery fire over a month ago actually has now led to a lot of additional supply heading into the West Coast. So good news is most areas should see gas prices inching down. The bad news is it's not necessarily good. But thanks for joining us on behalf of Matt and I. Another great episode. We'll see you here next time on Over a Barrel. So long.